The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View. The show is sponsored by the Nashua City Republican Committee, and if you like to attend our meetings, they're the second Thursday of every month at 6:30 at the Crown Plaza. And if you want to find out more about our organization, you can go to NashuaGOP.org to see our website and learn about the events that we have.
Welcome to The People's View.
Hello, and help me welcome Steve Negron, who's our representative from Ward 5 running for Congress, CD2.
Hey, Carl,
Steve,
how are you, sir?
how's it going?
It's going well, thank you.
Is it?
Thank you for having me.
Is how the campaign off and you're running around like crazy?
It's amazing, but you meet some phenomenal people in the state. We've been as far north in the Coas County as Colebrook. We've been out to the western part in Keene, certainly around here. So it's been a great opportunity to go out and meet some great folks in the 2nd Congressional.
Well, you're a first-term legislator.
Yes, sir.
And with that experience, you decided to run for Congress.
I did.
How come?
Well, first of all, Congress only has 35 more people than our legislature, right? So, right, 435 to 400. So it was really a great microcosm of how, you get that many people together. And we've learned some things about how you can actually truly work across the aisles and get some legislation done. But the reason why I ran is I believe that our 2nd Congressional needs some representation. We had a great windfall in 2016. We won the corner office with the governor, the executive council, and of course we won the House and the Senate. And one of the things that I've been hearing and actually talking out to folks in the governor's office is that, where is the help that when he picks up the phone and calls Washington, where's the help from the federal delegation that's there to reach back and help the state? And he doesn't get that. So he sometimes has to go on his own down to Washington to try to get the help for the state. Sure. And that's really one of the reasons that I jumped into this race is that the people of the 2nd Congressional District deserve a representative. They deserve representation. And I think that over the last couple of terms, the people in the 2nd CD haven't gotten that. So that's why I wanted to go and run and see if I couldn't be the voice for the people.
Yeah, actually, our delegation down there actually opposes our governor.
Absolutely, absolutely,
so that's,
right. It's an uphill battle.
Terrible battle.
Yes, sir.
Well, what do you think are the biggest issues that you're going to face if you get elected?
Well, certainly one of the things that in my mind are things like immigration, healthcare, national security, a national right to work, I think is big. And so those are the things that I believe are going to be points of my campaign. Certainly there's a lot of talk about immigration right now. For me, it's a topic that's very close to me. My grandfather immigrated here from Mexico, and it's funny, I was doing some research and I actually found his crossing card from 1917 from Port Arthur, Texas, when he came in 1917. And then his naturalization card when he got naturalized in 1946. And unfortunately, he went back he's from Mexico, Michoacan, Mexico, which is on the western part, and he contracted typhoid. But the reason why he went back to Mexico was that he was so proud of being an American citizen. And so there's a right way to do this. We know what the right way to do it is. We're not doing it, and we need to be doing it better. National security is a topic for me is kind of dovetail with immigration. And I'm all for immigration. I'm vehemently against illegal immigration. There's a way to do this, to come into this country. And part of the issue of national security with immigration is that we don't know who's coming into the country. And, in my experience in the military, which I'm a retired Air Force officer, is, my whole life, plus what I've done with my small business, is actually done national security. I was a ICBM missile combat crew member in the 80s, where I was the guy that went 60 to 90 feet underground and had 10 nuclear missiles, there. And I was one of those guys that if the president ever gave the order through the National Command Authority, I would go ahead and do what we needed to do, based on what we were trained to do. And so national security has always been in the forefront, and it's about keeping this country safe. And we have situations out there where when the wall came down in the late 80s, where we knew at the time who the bad person was, right, or who our main adversary was, and all we had to do was look east. Well, now that nuclear weapons have proliferated the world right now, we don't know where to look. So our status in the world as a nuclear power has become tenuous. Over the last 8 years, I think we let that go into a state of mediocrity. And now we're asking the men and women that are out there as part of the triad, which are the submarine launched ballistic missiles, the bombers that carry nuclear weapons, and of course the land-based ICBMs, to go ahead and get to that state that we were when I was a missile combat crew member and pulling alerts. And you just can't do that overnight. And so we now realize that that is a focus that we have to have within the government to make sure that we can get all that, the stewardship of our nuclear arsenal back to a place where it needs to be. So national security is very close to me. Being a military guy, you know, I did a little chart. My family and my wife's family, collectively, we have 109 years of military service to this country and counting, because my oldest son is on active duty right now as a CV-22 Osprey crew chief in Hurlburt Air Force Base in Florida. So my father retired Air Force. My wife's father was both a Marine and an Army guy, served in Korea. My wife served 30 years. My sister served 10. I served. My sister, my nephew served 10. So I've grown up around patriots. And I know that the world that was given to us, we deserve the right to be able to protect it in the same way and pass it down to generations and generations. So I'm really excited about what I bring to the table about national security. I've dealt with it at the highest levels at the Pentagon, at the Air Staff, so I have a great understanding of a worldview based on what I've done and what my company does. My company still does some things for the military, primarily in the nuclear world. I can't talk too much about it, but we're out there making sure that the weapons that we currently have are still ready to go at a moment's notice to be able to protect this country.
So you, in what way do you, in organization or in testing, or how do you, what do you do for involving with the security of the?
Sure. So right now, we have some people that actually ensure that some of the components on a nuclear ICBM are still meeting the requirements that they were meant to do when they were originally bought. Over time, things degrade, and there's graceful degradation of piece parts of the system. So what we do in support of another large defense contractor is we provide that unique engineering expertise to make sure that that part of the nuclear triad
something you had in the training as an officer?
Absolutely. So my role, I was on the operational side, so we were the guys that would actually execute the message, or what's called an emergency action message, if the situation ever arose. We had a working knowledge of the maintenance of the system because we had to be able to know a little bit about that. But my experience with the ICBM world now is really coming back full circle given what's going on in North Korea. And so I can tell the people of New Hampshire, and specifically the 2nd Congressional District, that the men and women out there that are pulling alerts right there are poised, they're capable, they're mission ready, and they're ready to go at a moment's notice. And we have some great capability that's out there. So in the unlikely event that something would happen, I think that this government's resolve and reaction would be swift, violent, and horribly one-sided. So I rest and I go to bed at night knowing that we've got the right men and women out there watching the watch for this country.
Well, you really have to watch that and watch the budget too, because they're not giving you all your ask.
You know, it's really funny, having been in the military and actually working in the defense industry with large corporations, I understand how the budget process works intimately. One of the things, you know, there's 12 authorization bills that happen at the government level, and all of them, I think, are inflated. All of them need to be able to be trimmed down. You know, we had a great tax plan, which was a great start, to be able to reduce taxes, but you have to reduce spending. And a lot of people aren't willing to rip off the Band-Aid and reduce those spending. I believe, and I've seen it firsthand, that there are some places that we could be more lean, that we could be more efficient. And I know that if we can do that in the areas that I'm very familiar with in the Department of Defense, then we could do that in all the other 11 bills that are out there. And I think we need to be taken to task. I think that you have to be able to go and look at what it is that you need to do from a readiness perspective in the military, and look at it across the board the same way and say, you know what, this is what we have. You have to live within your budget. We do it every day here in New Hampshire. People sit at the table, families sit at the table on a Sunday afternoon and balance checkbooks and try to live within their means. And the government should be no different. And I believe that there needs to be accountability at the government, that those people that are in charge of those things need to be held accountable for those, for the money that they're given. And in fact, you know, I think when you only give them a portion of what they do, they'll be very resourceful. As a businessman, if I know I only have X amount of dollars, I'm going to work within that, that arena. So We don't do that very well in the government. People think that we can't. I believe we can. I believe we should. And I'd be a huge proponent of being able to go ahead and trim down the federal budget.
I kind of agree with you there, but you're going to face a lot of outside influences.
Absolutely.
Nobody wants to lose that government money wherever it is, whether it's
Right.
a base or equipment or whatever.
Right.
And it's a lot heavier than it is here in New Hampshire.
It is, and I think, Carl, part of what we need to do absolutely is to be honest with ourselves. One of the things that I've learned is that there's ground truth somewhere, and everybody wants to go ahead and try and protect their nest egg. But the reality of it is that when you actually look at what is actually needed, and you can put together a legitimate reasoning as to why you're only getting X amount of dollars, I think that we will be able to work within those means. Yes, people are going to be hurt. People are going to be angry. But at the end of the day, it's about what we're doing is best for the country. And a lot of it isn't necessarily the people inside. There's all these people that have all those outside influences. And we have to be able to stand up and say no. You know, people ask me, why do I think it's different with me running? And I tell them, I said, it's not my seat. It's your seat. And I'm just a temporary employee. And if I'm not doing the job that you sent me to Washington to do, you bring me home. That's it. I mean, that's the way we do business. If I give you a contract and you're not fulfilling your obligations, then I stop it and you come home. And I think a lot of times people go to Washington and they get intoxicated with the idea of the trappings of Washington. I'm grounded because this doesn't define me. What defines me is that I'm a dad, and I'm a husband, and I'm a small business owner, and I'm a invested community member of Nashua. I've been here since 1989. This is my home. It's my adopted home, right? Because as a military guy, I was a nomad. And when I came here in 1989, I knew that this was a quintessential place to raise a family, which we've done with 3 beautiful children here. And so at the end of the day, if I'm not doing a job, I'll come home. And that's what I should be doing. People will do things to maintain their status in Washington because all of a sudden they have let that job as a senator or as a congressperson define who they are. And I'm so grounded that I know that, A, my wife would never let me do that. And B, is that, I know that for me to be true representative is that I should be here at the will of the people.
Well, what are other areas you think is the health and human services type of
and certainly,
problem?
Absolutely, Carl. The healthcare issue is at a point of collapse. And we've done some research about what it is that we think that we can do. There's this thing called an HSA or health savings account, which we believe that if it got traction, it really could provide another vehicle for people to do. So what an HSA is that, you put in money, the company puts in money, you use that money the way you see fit. One of the problems in healthcare is that you don't know what the cost of healthcare is. So I go to hospital XYZ and I get an MRI. Next, I get an explanation of benefits or an EOB, and there's a bottom line number. But if I call the hospital and ask me, I'm just curious, what did my MRI cost? It's very difficult for them to do that, right? What they will do is be able to say, well, we think it's about $3,000. But you have to understand is that in an institution like a hospital, that $3,000 doesn't just pay for the MRI. It pays for the toilet paper that's there. It pays for the floor cleaning. It pays for the cafeteria. It's a loaded rate, and it's a loaded price. What we need to get to do is get that kind of power back into the consumer, to the individual. So if I need an MRI, I can go to a place that just does MRIs, and I know that it's $500 versus a hospital that's $3,200. Me as a consumer should be able to decide where I want to go, but I have to get that information to you. And I believe that if you have the money, like in your HSA account, to be able to do those things that's beneficial to you, you're going to be a more informed consumer and be a better buyer of product. We do it in everything else. I'll shop to see what the lowest price of milk is, right? Or I'll go for a car, or I'll go for a house. Why can't I do that with healthcare? And we fundamentally need to look at, taking down these walls that preclude me from going from state to state. So if I have a policy that I need renewed and I go to, and I see that there's a provider in Idaho, I should have every right to go ahead and go to Idaho if that's what I need, because I'm the one that's the consumer. I should be able to do that. So I think fundamentally you have to bring down those barriers to competition and allow insurance companies to be able to do that and give the information to the consumer so they can make an informed decision.
You think that the insurance companies would welcome an approach like that? I mean, they benefit by a percentage.
Sure, absolutely. There's going to be an uphill battle, clearly. Right now, it's not that it's a monopoly, but I really don't have many alternatives, right? And so when you break down barriers to entry and you allow different companies to come in and you become competitive, I think, it would tell a company to sharpen your pencil. I mean, you've been in business, you know what I'm talking about, just like us. When you're pushed to test, you find a way that you can be more resilient and be more effective, and then that makes you more competitive in the market. If you don't have to be that kind of have that kind of competitive edge, I think you get kind of complacent, and then you just give an offering without really finding the best way to give that offering. So I believe that there will be some pushback from some of the larger insurance companies. I think it may give rise to other people,
some other company
that knows that right now,
yeah.
that's not a place or a marketplace that they can compete in because of these barriers to entry. And I think if we allow those kind of things and give the consumer the kind of information that they're looking for, I think we'll be able to start breaking down these walls and getting this healthcare back under control.
You see some of the doctors joining up and forming an entity that can give healthcare insurance for their services.
Absolutely.
And they're very cut back as far as that.
Right. When you become lean, and you look at that, you're providing an offering. You don't provide everything to everybody, but if you can provide a specific service that's lean, then I think that you become more effective in that kind of market space for that kind of offering. And I think that's what we're seeing more and more of that is that, you know, I understand the need for hospitals and they're out there because there's a large amount of offerings that they can have, but do I always have to go to a hospital? Do I always have to go? No, because, I mean, it's convenient. Right, I have an appointment at hospital X, Y, Z. I go in there, I go and I check in. They say at 11 o'clock you have an MRI. At 12 o'clock you go to lab to get your cultures and this, and it's all done for me. But I really walk out of there thinking I've been taken care of. But as long as I pay my premiums, I really don't know what the cost was to me. And we have to be able to get some insight into it. I think that's where we need to go.
And that's why these you see these instrument centers, I guess you call them. You know, the imaging centers.
Absolutely.
Because my son was in a situation where he had to look at paying for it himself.
Right.
And he found anywhere from $500 to $2,000 for an MRI in the area.
Right, and so your son did exactly what I'm talking about, is that he then found what was right for him, and that's the option that he took. You have to give people options to do that, and I believe that that's an important way of being able to reduce the cost of healthcare.
It takes a businessman's analytical ability to do that.
You know, we sometimes go along think that's our only option, and it's not.
Yeah.
You know, we believe that there's some creative ways to do that.
Most of the people are afraid to doing it. They don't know what they're talking about.
That's right. You know, they think that's, you know, you get big companies and that's the only option you have.
Those guys know what they're doing. Yeah, they know what they're doing. But not
That's
always
so true.
in your favor.
It isn't always in your favor. That's correct. Yeah.
So, and you're working now on what committee are you on?
I'm on the election law committee in the State House. Yes, sir.
And there's a little fight there for election law and all the wording that goes into, and everybody throws up their hands and what the hell are they talking about?
Right. It's, you know, and I look at that as a proving ground for the federal level. You know, we're just at the state level, but when we see bills that come through, you know, there's a way, I think, to be able to navigate those waters, and I think it's a nice little training exercise to be able to say, okay, if in fact this happens at the same level at the federal level, how do you navigate the menace of all that paper, and how do you get to the crux of what that bill is? And so what I've learned over the last two sessions now, is that, you know, to hone in on really what the crux of the bill is. There's a lot of flower, a lot of superfluous stuff around it, but what is the crux of what whoever the author or the sponsor of that bill is trying to do? And a lot of times you just go directly to the author and say, what is it that you're trying to affect with this bill? And I think that's important, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that may be in there that really shouldn't be in there. And if you're able to get to the epicenter of what that bill is, I think that's very important as we go forward, as you do legislation. Because some of these bills at the U.S. Congress are just reams and reams of paper. And how does one really effectively legislate when you've got, you know, stacks of paper on there? You have to be able to understand what's the right way and what's the right process to get to the crux of the issue, and that's really where you start making your money.
But you got to do a lot of explanation sometimes, definition of terms.
You do.
So
yeah, we see that in election law.
Yeah.
Because you may see a word and interpret it one way, and I may see the exact same word and interpret completely different. So really, what is the outcome of whatever that author wanted that word to mean? And a lot of it is just being able to listen. You know, I tell people when I go around the state and talk that my grandmother said that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You need to listen more than you talk.
Very good.
Right? And when you listen, then just through the process of osmosis, you're going to get a lot of information. A lot of times, you know, there's an old saying that, a person who talks isn't learning.
Right.
And, you have to just sometimes put it aside, just throttle back a little bit and just listen to what somebody's trying to say. And that's how I think is you can have effective legislation.
Well, I hope our audience is listening to us.
Yeah.
One other big area is the opioid crisis.
Yes, sir.
Everybody, unfortunately, just wants to throw money at it without evaluating whether it's successful, whatever the project is.
Right.
One of the areas I don't see a complete analysis presented to us. We're either paying for police, we're paying for hospitals, we're paying for this, and we're not somehow the end of making sure that people are broken of the habit, stay clean.
Right.
Is not being paid enough attention.
That's so true. One of the things when I ran for the state office is that was an issue that I ran on, and I still hold true to it today. One of the things you have to do, it isn't a stovepipe problem, right? There's bleed over and everything. So I think of it in three columns, if you will. One is stop the inflow of drugs into the country. And what does that mean? That means securing our borders. It goes right back to national security. One of the things that I think that we as a culture now realize is that these drugs that are coming in are not in the inner cities anymore. Where I remember growing up in the 60s, that's where you predominantly saw them. They're smart. They have now ventured out into the suburbs, and now they know that there's a need and a desire out there in the suburbs. One of the questions I ask myself is, why would somebody have to turn to something like that? Is it because of a lack of education? Is it because of a lack of an ability to get a good job? And he or she may think that's their only way out. So fundamentally, one is you have to take whatever law enforcements that are out there, and we need to do a better job of lashing up information, right? People don't want to share information because they believe that information for them is power. And whether it be state to state, federal to state, country, foreign country to state, we need to be able to get and there's information out there. We just have to be able to coalesce that information and to get a better picture so that we could try and prevent the drugs from coming in from the country to begin with. The second part of it is education. Is education starting at a very early age is to understand the demonic hold that this drug can have on you. The days of doing it once and then, it's just a fun drug to try once is gone, right? They are now being able to do some of these boutique drugs that it could be one time and it's lethal. We need to be able to educate the children that they understand that this isn't just, you can't just try it anymore. It isn't like trying a beer. Some of these things can have a lifelong effect. So the education part has to be there. And third is the treatment of it, right? Do we really know that if a 10-day treatment, 12-day, 30-day treatment, and then we let them go to treatment, how effective was that treatment? What is, how do we assess whether or not the treatment that we believe is working, what is the probability of them relapsing or recidivism? Are they going to go ahead and repeat? And I think that's data that we have to get to say that maybe we need to change, our treatment about it, right? And then we don't just throw them out back into society. What is it that we need to do fundamentally to make sure that we give them a path to be able to be successful and to become productive members of society? I think I came on your show a year ago, and we had just lost, my wife and I had some friends that just lost a son due to overdose. And I remember a young man that was eulogizing him, and he said that he was one of the bravest men he ever knew because every morning he got up and he didn't want to do this, but he couldn't stop himself. So how do we find a way to give young men and women the tools, an alternative to be able to combat whatever that demon is? And it is a sickness. It is something that we have to be able to look at it and treat it as such, and not just say, well, they're just a bad person and they made bad decisions. There was a reason why they got down that path, and we need to be able to find a way to be able to help them.
I don't hear anybody talking about that part of it.
I know, you have to. It's a
How
whole...
do you stop something that by understanding what starts it?
Right, absolutely, you have to. I mean, it's a whole concept, and I think we try to fix it by plugging one hole in the dike here. And we think, okay, well, that hole is plugged, but then it pops out twice over here. So we have to have fundamentally a way of being able to look at that and provide the help and assistance to people that need it.
And the follow-up to make sure that they stay clean.
Absolutely.
Way back in the 80s and 90s, I was working for a company that got a little bit involved in that because they were in nuclear medicine. There was a doctor that did a study of the brain on cocaine. And what we did is we did a film about this whole project to show what the effect of a casual user and a heavy user, had on brain circulation. And it was very, very good. We passed out some 5,000 videotapes to junior high schools. I don't know what happened to it, but I hope somebody's looking back and
Sure.
seeing that.
Right.
Because that was very effective at that time.
Right.
But I think, went up and then it went down, and then now all of a sudden it's a big problem again.
Right.
Bigger than it was in between.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of the issue is that once we see that we've started getting some successes on it, we kind of just back off a little bit. This is something that needs to be persistent. These are things, we know that there are people that are going to try to bring drugs into this country illegally. We know that. It's been going on for as long as I can remember. So this isn't just a one-time fix. We need to be lean. We need to be able to change with the times. We need to be able to change what we're doing and prescribe the things that we're doing. So we need to stay ahead of the game and stay ahead of them, because that's what they're doing to us right now.
And not just throw money at it.
And not just throw money at it. Right.
Because you have to use it and use it effectively.
Yes, sir.
And
absolutely.
That's why businessmen are successful. They use their money effectively.
When you know that it's your hard-earned dollars, right. You're very judicious with it, and you try to put your money where you get the most return on it, and that's what everybody should be doing in this crisis. In the federal government, it isn't. We just can't.
It's applied to across the board.
It does. It applies across the board. It's a way of
more highlighted.
Right.
Than
Absolutely. It's a way of doing business.
Right.
Clearly.
Right. And your candidacy is hot and heavy right now.
Yes, it is.
And you still got 8 months and 9 months? 9 months.
9 months, right. So the primary's in September.
Right,
Yes.
right. So good luck.
Thank you very much, Carl.
You need some help? You want some people to call you if they
Sure.
have some
So if you would
volunteers?
go to negronforcongress.com, there's some information there about me where you can go to the website to support. And we'll be putting out some issue statements and everything so people can get to know me. So I'll be seeing you around. You'll see me in grocery stores, and you'll see we're about to do some stuff that's really kind of unique here in the area. So we're really excited about where we're going with our campaign.
Well, we'll see you when it gets closer to the primary.
Absolutely.
Again. And don't forget, audience, that this is a 4.
A 4, that's right.
With the number 4 Congress.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carl.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.